Audio now unmuted. Mute Barbara. Next page. Grid view. View. You are currently on a collapsed menu button. Menu window. System dialog. Gallery. Separator cell. Gallop speaker. Speaker. Gallop show self view. Hide non-video participants. Separator cell. Show meeting timers. Separator full screen. Full screen. Full screen. Escape. Zoom webinar window. View. Grid view.
Everyone, we're just waiting for quorum and Alessandra, so just a couple minutes.
We are imminently close to having quorum, so oh, perfect. Okay, everybody's in the attendee pile, so we can get started. Welcome everybody to the June meeting of the Pedestrian Transit Advisory Committee. Who is taking minutes tonight? Oh, Brenda, are you saying that you are? I can't hear you.
I'm just looking to see who agreed to do it. Sorry, one second.
This is Ted. I'm doing
Oh,
the minutes.
gotcha. Thanks, Ted. Sorry.
All good. Thank you both. Okay, we will start with our roll call. Ted Alexander, who is obviously here.
Here.
Ginny Alverson. I see Ginny. Caroline Bodiger. Meredith Brown.
Here.
Laura Evans.
Here.
Christopher Ferry.
Here.
Preston Gatelius.
Here.
Satoko Harai. I don't see. Brenda Marvin.
Here.
Steve Mulder. Also don't see. Barbara Myers.
Here.
Bianca Norkunis can't be here. Vitor Pamplona.
Here.
Zach Rosenberg. I don't see. Alessandra Sider, myself. Rob Stanzel. I don't see. And Carol Vugaris. I also don't see. Our ex officio, Willem Baugh, who I don't see here. Kate White.
Here.
And Justin Schreiber.
Here.
Awesome. And it looks like we have guests, Karen and Mackenzie. Karen and Mackenzie, we love having you here so much, but we also know exactly who you are, so I won't force you to tell us again. But thank you for being here with us. Okay, I did not send out the May minutes because we were working on them. So I will send those out with our July agenda for next month, and we'll vote on them next month. I do not have any administrative announcements tonight. Does anybody else have any announcements that they would like to share? Awesome.
I just want to make sure you guys are seeing the agenda, right? Looks a little different on my screen. Okay, great.
Yeah, looks great. Okay, perfect. Subcommittee updates, community events. Would anybody else like to give the community events update? I always do this in the hopes that someone will, but that's okay. I'm happy to. We met this past Monday we spent most of our time reviewing a draft of our letter from the Union Square Walk audit, which many of you attended, so thank you for that. We looked at all the data and all the feedback that we got from participants and consolidated it into a letter and discussed some proposed recommendations. So our next steps in the plan are to finalize the letter, circulate it to our collaborating organizations, circulate it to all the participants to see if they want to sign on as individuals. And we will bring it to this committee for review as well. I don't know the exact timing of that with all the other reviewers, but it will be at some point in the process, of course. And then the other thing we discussed was the possibility of hosting a community walk on Somerville Ave with mobility. I'm sure many of you went to the kickoff meeting for that project, the Quick Build project that was held this Monday. So we're seeing if there's a possibility of hosting a community walk in that project area sometime in July. So we'll keep folks updated. And we are planning on discussing that project at one of our upcoming meetings as well. Anything I'm missing, Preston, Ted, Barbara? Awesome. Vitor, I know that Design Review met this Tuesday.
Correct. And I think we're going to discuss this later on, right?
Yes.
Because we just met about Western Pearl.
Yes, we will look forward to hearing your thoughts and recommendations during that agenda item. And then special projects, which is on hold for a while. Okay, so we only have 2 agenda items for this meeting. The first is to discuss a potential letter about the changes to the Route 90. So we, at our last PTAC meeting, had guests from the MBTA present to us on the proposed changes to Route 90, which, just to remind folks, Route 90 currently runs down Highland and then goes up Cross Street to serve many schools in the East Somerville community. And the rerouting would have it take Washington Street instead, which is a significantly longer distance for those little legs, and also requires crossing a pretty busy and dangerous street. And, the families in this area have already endured particular hardship because many of them are being rerouted from the Winter Hill School. So, we didn't really dig into the rerouting at our last meeting because it was a short agenda item, but it seemed like the committee was pretty, had a lot of questions and an opposition to the changes. So I talked to Meredith after the meeting, and she put together a really fantastic set of notes on the project. Meredith, would you like to present the notes that you took? I didn't realize that you would be here tonight, so I would love for you to do it and not me.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm happy to. I can only stay for like 20 minutes more. But the conflict that I had, it was later than I thought. So yeah, I'm happy to. Let me see if I can share. Oh, I can't share my screen, but I can talk through the
Oh, Meredith, we can enable that for you.
Oh, okay.
Just give us 1 second.
Sure.
Oh, actually, Justin, I think you might have to do it as your host. If you just make Meredith a co-host, then she'll be able to share her screen.
I'm now a co-host. Amazing. Thank you. All right. So Alessandra sent out a link to these talking points. But yeah, it's basically just like a bulleted list at this point of notes in response to the presentation we heard last week. I think as I see it, and again, this is like very open to discussion, but I would ask, particularly given what Alexander mentioned about the schools, that the MBTA at least consider restoring 90 service on Cross Street between Broadway and Tufts in the fall. You know, at least until like the bus redesign project sort of materializes in the sort of downstream phases that they mentioned. I think one point that I'm pretty sure about, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this came up during the Tufts Neighborway Walk, was that the Tufts plans were designed in conjunction with the MBTA as well as other sort of emergency services to ensure that the plans are compatible with large vehicles. So I think they're kind of blaming the Neighborway construction for this rerouting, or and certainly temporarily aligning the plans with the plans to kick off construction. But it doesn't seem like I can't see why this is necessarily something that means that they cannot route buses down Tufts. I guess getting into the points about Cross Street, yes, like I understand the operational difficulties that the MBTA is having. I frequently ride the 90, and I understand it from that experience. But I think the experience of other parents and families in the community is that it's challenging for the same reasons. It's really challenging to, if you're a driver coming in from like Summer Street to drop off your kids, it's really challenging to sort of get in and get through and find a place to like get your car and get your kids out safely. So I think the operational challenges are not unique to the MBTA. And taking away the 90 will exacerbate this problem because the families that are currently using a bus will be using cars probably, and that will just make it worse. There are, presumably students in East Somerville that use the 90 to get to the high school. It's not clear like what alternatives there will be for them. I think the MBTA mentioned a lot of like bus redesign plans that will happen in the future, and that may alleviate some of the challenges that we will see once this change goes into effect in a couple of days. But it's not clear when those changes will happen, particularly the 85 going to McGrath. Like I think that's not something that's happening imminently, and yeah, so I don't understand necessarily how those like align. And yeah, I guess just some points around like the demographics of the community and the reliance on buses. This is a particularly sort of vulnerable community that this map may or may not be like up to date, but I think like the points still apply. It's an area that has a lot of minorities, a lot of low income families, English isolation. So it is an area that already has relatively little bus service, and I think taking the little service that it exists away will be a particular hardship for that community. And then the point that Alexander mentioned about the alternative route going down Washington Street. First of all, this is already a route that has a lot of buses, as you can see on the sign. But I think if families taking the 90 are using the 90 still, and then making the longer walk to Capuano or Winter Hill or East Somerville Community School, this is a really challenging intersection. I cross it daily. It is not fun. There's no crosswalk. The nearest crosswalks are pretty far away. So I just kind of run across with my kids, and it's hard. And then Alessandra, do you want to talk to the point that you added about the parking restrictions?
Yeah, totally. So, just thinking about some of the operational challenges that the MBTA is experiencing, which are real, right? Like, I don't dispute that at all. I think that there is a way to make it operationally easier for them without completely taking away service, which is something that, this idea was discussed with other people. It wasn't just me, coming up with it. But, Cross Street is in the bicycle network plan, the priority implementation of the bicycle network plan, which is set to be implemented by 2030, which means, and Cross Street is set to have a one-way protected bike lane, which means that parking restrictions are going to go on Cross Street sometime in the next 5 years anyway. So I think to make more space on the street, we should encourage the MBTA to just implement more parking restrictions in the near term so that the bus can operate more easily. Which, might be a little bit of like a an olive branch, so to speak, to the MBTA, and just making it easier for them to stay on the street.
Yeah, at least impressionistically, it seems like the intersection of Cross and Broadway is the most challenging part. That's where it tends to get a little bit stuck. So I think some targeted changes there would go a long way.
Thank you,
So-
Meredith.
Those are the notes I put together. Again, open to discussion if there's any disagreement or additional points that people would raise.
Go ahead, Vitor.
So here's something I noticed recently. This wasn't the case about like a month ago, but the new the bus network redesign interactive map, not the PDF online, but the interactive map that MBTA puts up, that has been changed. And both the 85, the 9 is already passing through Washington, following their choice here to move over there. But the 85 is now going through McGrath. So to me, that is a big thing that, I mean, they might have just made a mistake on this release. But if not, if this is real, now they are actually planning McGrath to have bus stop infrastructure and maybe more routes through that same road. If that is the case, I don't think it solves our problem in the short term, but on the long term, we could potentially revert the decision they made to move to Washington back into McGrath. I don't think they are even interested in having Cross Street as a viable route anymore. So if that is the case, then we might need to play that game of maybe trying to get the lesser of the evils and just get it back into McGrath that is closer to the school than on Washington. But this will only be after construction, I think, of the boulevard.
Yeah, I think she mentioned it in her presentation last month, and I went to the map because I was like, I don't remember buses going down McGrath, and the old map was still in place at that time. So I was actually really confused about, like, because they clearly mentioned something with the 85 being rerouted to McGrath, but then they, as you mentioned, they did update it, I think just within the last week or so. I think they have it such that 85 and 90 maybe both go down McGrath in the future. But again, like, that is after the boulevardization, which is like not like a near-term thing. So
Yeah, so the information that is online right now is the 85 stays on McGrath and 90 on Washington. I'm
Oh.
not sure if there is online anything that says we're going to revert this back into McGrath. And maybe if we want that, is something we need to push for. But again, it doesn't solve the short-term problem of doing construction of stuff and so on.
I guess this is another question that I had for folks, because they did, oh, thank you, Karen. The 85 on the bus redesign has a pretty infrequent schedule every 90 minutes. Yeah, definitely. But one thing that I was curious about is like the 85, while it does provide like an alternative to north-south service, it doesn't serve like the Spring Hill community, like the Winter Hill folks that have been displaced, right? It goes from Assembly down to south of Union Square. So it wouldn't really provide like a commensurate alternative. And like I mean, at least pre-construction of McGrath, like it seems like it would actually provide a less safe route for students to be dropped off at, and then they would have to cross McGrath, which is even unsafer, even less safe than Washington. So I mean, I don't know if that is really like a viable alternative in the long term, or in the short term before the reconstruction of McGrath. Curious what other people think.
Just an additional comment. Maybe it's interesting for us to think about these 3 stages. Like, what should we do, or what should MBTA do during construction of Tough Street, which the street will be closed. So we need to figure, that there needs to be some other route. And then after construction, before anything on the boulevard side happening, and then what we want to do after that. And if there are 3 answers, great, we can push 3 different answers, but like we at least have the options available in 3 different ways.
yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Go ahead, Christopher.
Just one of the things, I used to take the 90 before the East Somerville Green Line stop opened. So one of the things that occurs to me is if Tough Street is temporarily out of commission or even long-term out of commission because it's being turned into a neighborway, it didn't used to go down that street. So can they just revert it to the old, do the hairpin turn at Washington and go back up to Cross? Yes, that is, they're losing the connection to East Somerville, but which population are they looking to discomfort the more? The commuters making the connection to East Somerville, who are adults who have to cross Washington Street, or students for 3 different schools, if you include the charter school, having, if they're especially on inbound, having to cross Washington Street. So I'm kind of thinking that it feels like they're trying to get halfway to the bus redesign with this by rerouting it onto Washington Street and getting that done early so that they get less pushback on it later. And the easiest thing would be to just revert and not have it go down Tough Street in the first place, go back to the way it was. I mean, it's unfortunate that we don't have, that they didn't build East Somerville in a way that it has a actual bus stop, bus turnaround like they do, say, at Leechmere. That would have been a useful thing to have, maybe taken some more land by eminent domain and actually made that station more integrated. But, yeah. The idea of what it's going to do with the redesign, that's a whole different thing. It's a whole new system. This is just a one-time thing. And for this purpose, I would argue to just take it back onto the McGrath and not have it on Tough Street at all. At least until the redesign kicks in.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up too, but I know it's definitely further, but it's not. I don't feel like it's that much further. Austin Street versus Fountain Ave or whatever the equivalent to Fountain Ave is. I think like I'd have to like map it out, but it's I've walked both and they're not that different. So
yeah, I definitely feel like there are problems with the current routing, whether it's Tough Street or going down Cross Street. I can see the argument for getting off of Cross Street, but I'd rather have something going on that alignment. And Cross Street right now, they're not willing to put a bus on McGrath. So until McGrath is rebuilt or the bus whatever redesign is something that has something to replace that. Yeah, that, like Vitor was saying, it's a multi-phase thing, but for now, it seems like the easiest thing is to lose the connection to East Somerville and make people have to cross the street. It would be nice if there were, better crossing controls there, but it would be nice if there were better crossing controls there anyway, regardless of the bus.
yeah.
So is anybody, are there any points that Meredith walked through that you disagree with, that you would not want to advocate for? Or does this seem like something that we do want to move forward with in terms of advocating to the MBTA to reverse these changes?
I think that these changes make a lot of sense, and I also liked Christopher's, response to moving back to the original route as well. And that's something again that, like Vitor was saying, also this can be like the phase 1, and then they can still go ahead. It doesn't prevent them from doing any of their other plans, further down the road.
Barbara, I see you're unmuted. Did you want to say something?
I agree with this. I like this letter and I like all the discussion. I think we should go ahead with it.
Awesome. Well, hearing no objections and hearing general agreement, then I think that we should just go ahead and like write the letter and send it, because I think the idea is that we wouldn't really we would just summarize these notes in like narrative form. We wouldn't change any content. So I'll go ahead and motion that we, turn this into an actual letter and then send it to the MBTA. Do I have a second?
This
I guess
is Victor,
before,
a second.
before we take a vote, I think, should we discuss the reframe of the ask in light of, I think I agree with what Christopher was saying about like, let's just, like, there are many constraints, they can't all be met, and maybe the best thing would be for them to just go back to the original route. So I guess, like, is the vote to move forward with that, like with that change incorporated, I guess? Is that what we're thinking?
I think so. Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. With that change incorporated and everything that we have talked about tonight incorporated, I should clear.
Cool.
I would add that I do think it is very important to highlight the dangers to the kids on Washington, because they might just not know, So it's just interesting to list them out and spell it out for them so that there is at least some record in place. What I don't know is like this change is going live in like 3 days.
Yeah, Saturday,
So
I think.
we need to move very fast. Because
Yeah,
they're
I mean,
not
I think
gonna do
there's
two changes.
no stopping that process, but I think
Yeah.
the ask would just be to revert.
And who knows, maybe they put additional guards to help people cross the street on Washington for now. Because we need to provide other solutions if they are not gonna change.
Anything else folks would want to make sure we get incorporated into the letter? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to renew my motion.
This is Vitor, a second.
Thank you, Vitor. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
I
All opposed? Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Meredith, do you want to write the letter? I know you spend a lot of time taking the notes as well.
I can put together a draft and then pop it off to you. I will be out of town starting early next week, but I can try to do that over the weekend and then leave it in your capable hands.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Meredith.
Alessandra, I'll just add that like you guys could review again in July. Just to be clear, the change definitely will happen on Sunday. But I agree it's good to act fast, but if you felt it needed further review, I don't think that would be a problem. It's also not a problem to just send it off, as you guys decided.
Do folks want to see the draft in July, or do you feel comfortable just moving forward with it just as is?
I feel like everyone seems to be in agreement about what is being said, so it's probably okay to send the letter. That's how I feel, at least.
Agree.
Cool. Awesome. Wow, we're so ahead of time. We might actually finish up early tonight, you guys. So our next agenda item is a follow-up discussion on the Western Pearl Street concept design that that Mobility very kindly presented to us at our last meeting. And so before I kick it off to Vitor to summarize the conversation that the design review subcommittee held, I just want to preface that I think the ideal tonight would be that we end with a recommendation to Mobility on the design direction that we would like them to take, which could be just concept 1 or concept 2 or a combination of the concepts. But I think it would be really helpful to give them something like a concrete recommendation from VTech. If that's not something that is possible tonight and we just can't align, like that's okay. But we should at least aim to have some sort of concrete thing to give them from us. So I'll hand it to Vitor. And I know you put together a letter, Vitor. I don't know if you want to walk through us with that.
I can. Do people remember the options we had? I can just show it quickly. Can I get screen sharing? So we had two options from mobility, and both of them are very similar in the sense of what they do, but they have very different intersections and properties for the bike lanes and the way you design things around. Let me see if I can. So just to refresh everybody, this is option one when you have this particular intersection on Medford and Pearl. And then it keeps first the two bike lanes in the south, the same side of the road, and pushes bikes, of course, to Silton Ave, Gilman Street, and so on to cross, either to cross into Somerville or to come back here at Macbeth. And option two is not that much different, but you have a bike lane on the north side, and then this type of intersection with Medford. So in a sense, we are choosing like which one of the options are we choosing to create more of a traffic calming feature than the other. We did review, so Preston and I and Laura, we met to review both plans. And to be very clear for you all, I was on the option 2 camp, and I changed my mind to option 1 because after all, I think this is going to be better for the community and this traffic calming features. But we went through all the details there, and we wrote a little letter. I did a review of all the feedback the city received, which was, I don't know, 60-page long type of document that they provided back to us of the main requests from the neighborhood. And we wrote a little letter, if I can find it. See, can you, let's see, wait a second, too busy. There you go. So we wrote this little letter after our discussion, and it just reveals, the first part here just reveals what residents have said to mobility in an interesting fashion that we can use to gauge out on options. And I can't stress this enough. The main point of that full report was about traffic calming. It wasn't about like bike lanes. It wasn't about sidewalks and so on. It was about traffic calming. It was about speeding and so on. There were some points about crossings and safety at intersections and so on, the sidewalk conditions, and some environmental and aesthetic issues that they have seen in the street. So these were kind of like the main points that were there at the document. And then during the meeting, we mostly reviewed those options. We agreed that option 1 would be better from that standpoint, mostly from a traffic calming perspective. But we added 5 points, and the first one is we would like to see, because the requests were so much focused on traffic calming, we think we can probably do a little more on traffic calming just to nail this issue down as much as possible. We don't know exactly what can be done, but like it would be interesting to have more features. One of them, for instance, is to have a raised intersection on Bradley Street. And this is exactly when the two lanes for the bike lanes it is exactly the place where one of those lanes has to cross the street and go to the north side. So having a more physically bigger intersection there, maybe raised or with more traffic calming features, allow the cyclists to just cross it and not interfere with other patterns for both pedestrians and the traffic there. We also would like to see a more interesting planning for all of the bus stops that will be put in place, specifically on what would happen if the bus is not running in the street. So, the MBTA decides, just like they did with Tufts, that they are not interested on this street anymore. What are we going to do with the bus stops, with the physical infrastructure for the bus stops that we placed there during this reconstruction? And this is just about, thinking through what can we do with them. We can put, maybe some green space as opposed to the concrete that is there, or maybe we just leave as concrete. But I think just having a plan would be interesting to see, because this is a pretty clear possibility that can happen in the future. And then two bigger points here. These are more like options and optionals to have, but I went there to visit Gilman Street to see how well that street was today. And one of the things that became evident to me, at least, is that Gilman crosses McGrath, and it goes underneath McGrath. So it connects East Somerville and, say, Center Somerville quite nicely. But the street today is very sketchy. Like, it's really hard to imagine, like, a parent allowing a kid to go through that to get to the school. So one of the outcomes from this discussion, at least in my mind, is can we get that street in a better fashion? Can it be this better connector for the community to send everybody through that connection instead of crossing McGrath even after the boulevard? So can we make something better there? Because if that is the case, then the dual bike lane will also go through that. And we can have this very nice way to connect East Somerville that maybe we have never imagined before, but it's just like something better than this massive highway that we have in between. And the street is already there. It's just kind of sketchy for users to go through. And then the last one is just a point that was made by Preston. If the south bike lane, which today leads on option 1, leads to McGrath, today it goes from a place of safety, meaning you are inside the city, it's just regular cars, regular streets, and this will dump you on McGrath right now. So what do you do when you get there? This can use some anxiety and so on, might not be the thing you want to right now. So can we shift that bike lane, the south bike lane, and send all bikes through Gilman so that they stay in a safe route throughout? They're not on Pearl anymore. And if we can do that, it would be nice just from a safety standpoint, and then we can really make this connector with East Somerville. So and those were essentially the points we discussed. There were a lot of little items on the plan and trying to understand the features that both plans had. But in summary, we do think option 1 is better, and we should go with it as it stands today. We just need to make either as is or a few some changes just to enhance it a little bit.
Thank you.
Sorry for the monologue. Was that clear enough?
Very clear. Now you know how I feel every meeting, so thank you for monologuing instead of me.
And I should say, Laura and Preston, please chime in if I forgot something.
No, that seemed very good to me.
Okay. Peter, actually, would you mind keeping your letter up on the screen just so we can refer back to it if we need to?
Sure. Sure.
Awesome. Would anybody like to speak to any of these points or ask our design review subcommittee any questions about what they proposed?
I definitely agree with the comment about wayfinding and better marking for Gilman Street. I would go through there, took my daughter through there for several years, and we would cross at Pearl, and I didn't even know the tunnel was there for a very long time. We ended up not really doing it because it seemed further out of the way. Makes more sense for bikes where a small detour is less total time, especially if you're not waiting for a crossing. But yeah, that's making that be a happy pedestrian and bicycle bit of infrastructure, and maybe even something, talking with the the Arts Council or something to make it even a little bit of a landmark on its own. Let's throw a block party. Let's, get murals or something and some lighting. There's been some amazing things done with bike infrastructure and tunnels so that they're not just all dank and scary.
I even thought about pedestrianizing the street. You just like go full in. This is the connection. This is the new, community path kind of feeling for this connector. Because today there's already 2 flex posts in the tunnel, so cars need to go around. They need to swivel if they want to go through. So it's already kind of like half closed. Anyway, it is a shared street, so it's supposed to be for pedestrians as well. We just don't have any infrastructure there right now to support that from a design standpoint.
Does mobility have any numbers on how often that's used by pedestrians, bikes, or cars? I imagine cars would be the easiest thing that might have been measured.
Bear with me and I can take a look. I think we do a bike count in the area. Just want to clarify for Vitor that the shared street program is no longer active and that those flex posts aren't there. Just to clarify.
Or not
but if
everyone? Okay.
No, there was a sort of a quick build chicane at one point. That does not exist today. And give me a moment and I can look to see if we have some data we can bring on the screen.
I do, well, while Justin is bringing that up, I do know that both Gilman Street and Skilton are slated to be neighborways in the bike network plan, but they are not in the priority network. Only the path through Ed Leathers Park is in the priority network. So I mean, it seems like the vision is aligned. It's just not necessarily like on the timeline of this project.
And maybe I should clarify and Justin jump in if I get this wrong, but Gilman Street is a neighborway at this time. So it's more of that at some point we would want to rebrand it with the kind of branding we've pulled together for Glen Street. But some of the things that ended up in the priority networks because some of that is existing.
Yeah, it has the contraflow bike treatments at the intersections. There's constructed ones at Cross and Walnut. There's a more painted one at halfway by the underpass. Doesn't have all the bells and whistles of the newest neighborways like the purple signs and the purple sharrows and like speed humps. Doesn't have speed humps, but it is a neighborway. It's pretty popular because it goes under the under McGrath. But just to be clear, when we're showing the neighborway as the the other direction for biking, like our intent would be to improve it alongside this project. I don't know if that means we could do everything we did on Glen Street, but our intent would be to bring it in more with our standards for neighborways. Because we're saying that this is how you get back. This is the other route, so it needs to be sort of a safe route for
Right. And I found really fitting that this discussion is happening at the same time as the 90 and debate, because it's all about East Somerville and how they have been, not really received our attention until, these days.
I have 2 questions about I just want to understand more kind of design reviews discussion on 2 things. The first is that I also prefer concept 1, just generally. And I am curious about what additional traffic calming design review is kind of envisioning at Medford Street. Because to me, concept 1 seems fairly comprehensive. Like there's a road bend, there's a stop sign, there's a raised crosswalk, there's the existing speed hump. And I was in touch with some local residents, and just based on their anecdotal observations, I know we also asked mobility for some hard data, but it sounds like the speed hump has resulted in like significant speed reductions. So I just like having that information coupled with kind of the proposed treatments in concept one for that intersection, like I feel fairly confident that it would be a really effective intersection. But I would like to understand more, like kind of what additional features you might be hoping for.
So just to be clear, is this on Medford or Pearl? Because you mentioned Medford.
Just at the entire intersection.
Yeah. So we didn't discuss Medford at all, and I think we can add a point there, which because now Medford is the straight route. Some traffic calming features should stay there. If they are there, they should just stay there and be part of a bigger plan. On Pearl, I think the main concern is that it's still a straight shot, right? Or there is some chicanes there, but like it's minimal for a very long distance. So we could do more. And I think this just goes to the to how much do we need to address this traffic speeding complaints that we saw. And I do think the plan right now does a pretty good job, but it doesn't feel like it provides much support. Specifically, like there is, of course, there is no data to support any of these decisions. So how much it is actually decreasing in speeds, right? And is it enough? And I think that question, is it enough, is not answered on this plan. I'm not exactly sure what can we do more on that, but it is, to me, it's not clear that this solves many of the speeding issues that we have seen.
So to clarify, it sounds like your focus is on Medford Street specifically, like calming traffic as folks are coming westbound on Medford Street before they hit the Pearl Street intersection. Am I understanding correctly?
No, so on the Pearl Street redesign, it's still, I should just open the map, I guess, but it's still like a straight shot on Pearl Street, not on Medford. So it's like it's hard to picture how much of traffic calming we are actually getting with these features, because just a few chicanes and so on. So it's like we might need more. And I can just show the map. But I just, so here you can see that there is one how they call this, chicane, I guess, and another and just the bumps, right? So we could have, and none of these, some of these are raised, some of these are not, but there is a straight shot still, right? And the buses are there, so when the buses are around, speed is going to be limited, of course. But we could have, for instance, another chicane, or we could have another thing just to reduce speed. We're thinking on this. We specifically wrote down this intersection here to be raised, or just to be bigger, so it can give more space for the bikes here to decide what they're gonna do. If they're gonna take the full road, or they're gonna merge and cross the street or not. Because this seems to be a particular issue of these types of construction. For the two bike lanes, just one side, you have to cross it at some point. But the main issue, I think, is like it's still, even after that, it's still a straight shot for cars. And maybe we need a little more, maybe need some not more bump outs, or more raised intersections, or raised crosswalks, just to reduce as much as we can, because it's such a big problem right now.
Okay, gotcha. That's helpful. Thank you, Victor. Yeah, Justin.
Can I just ask a clarifying question on the Bradley,
Oh, yeah.
the request for a raised intersection at Bradley? Is that for bikes heading towards Medford Street to get onto the 2A? Is that the idea? If you're sharing the lane, and to just have a larger area than the crosswalk to make that left onto the.
Correct. Imagine somebody coming in from, like, say, James Street or before, and they took the full lane
Right.
going left or going west, and then
Yeah.
they want to take Silton Ave. They need to cross it. So there is just like this missing component, or what do bikers that are coming from the north side do?
Right. So sort of extending it across Bradley, is that the idea? So that there's just
Yes,
more space to get.
just more space, just some
Yeah.
markings to explain to both drivers and pedestrians specifically. This could be a high crossing kind of area for bikes.
Great. Thank you.
My other question, Vitor, was, and all of design review. So the recommendation on bike lanes. So is the proposal in your thinking to remove the bike lanes from Pearl Street altogether and just use Gilman Street for two-way bike travel? So
Yes.
kind of like the bike route in concept one, but instead of biking south along McGrath for a bit, cyclists
Right.
would cross McGrath to connect to East Somerville.
So I think that was the point. Like, if we have this beautiful path through Silton Ave and Gilman Street, why don't we just move both? Move this particular south side one lane of bike lane together with Silton Ave, so both are together, and they're just in a safer space. And because we don't have a bike lane here anymore, then we could either increase the sidewalk or have more parking space, but we have more options there. Because right now, this lane will just lead cyclists straight into McGrath. And, like, I don't even know who wants to cross this. This, doesn't make much sense to me from a risk standpoint. This is way too risky. And right now it's kind of suggesting or recommending or incentivizing bikers to take this route instead of the Silton Road kind of thing.
I would add on the dropping people at McGrath is that there's not protected bike infrastructure on the other side. So you're taking bikers that might feel like they're on a very comfortable two-way path, then okay, I still have a path that's going straight, I'll take that. And it's then putting them in an area that's really not up to where it should be, versus if they're prioritized, even just with signage, maybe the bike path stays, but signage saying, no, really, you should consider going down Skilton and through Gilman. You're going to have a better time. It connects probably on average. I bet you would bike faster going that way, not having to wait to cross over McGrath, and then just popping up a little bit of cross street or something over there. But for a lot of the riders, we thought about the destinations, it's not really going to make a big difference for the majority of the people biking through the area.
So can you talk me through the routing again? So, like, if someone was starting from like Gilman Square, for example, then they would take Gilman Street eastbound. But then what if they still needed to cross McGrath there? Or, like, if someone
Gilman
was
Street
coming...
eastbound, so it
Yeah.
would use the tunnel.
Oh, I see, to pass under McGrath.
Yeah. I mean, that's my understanding is that's where a lot of people currently, like, if you're biking over to East Somerville, that's a pretty common way to get over there. But yeah, I don't know. It long term, having the bike lane there would be great once the McGrath is boulevardized and it has its own bike lane infrastructure. But short term, probably still good to have it on the time scale this is being done. But that it really would probably benefit a lot of bikers to have signage that directs them that, like, here's the safe and comfortable route. Please take Skilton. Like, I don't know. That was the thought.
No, yeah, okay, thank you. That's really helpful. What if So right now the two-way protected bike lane only goes until or is proposed to go until which intersection? Bradley, right?
The Bradley and Skilton intersection.
Yeah. Would
Yeah.
would it be possible to extend it all the way to Walnut Street, where people would need to go up to connect to Gilman anyway? And then they would have like the two-way protected lane, go up to Walnut, get on Gilman Street or from Gilman
Oh,
Street, and then use the tunnel.
So I'm confused on the go up to connect to Gilman.
so I think just to recap, the double bike lane is on this part of Pearl, and then they will take this Skilton Avenue, right, and go go through the park, and then join on Cross Walnut, and then join on Gilman Street.
Got it.
And Gilman then crosses over to East Somerville. So I think this path is actually could be really nice for bikers and pedestrians, frankly, if it is prepared to actually do that, to actually handle that traffic, as opposed to having just, you know, one bike lane will go straight on Pearl. So if you're going east, you go straight on Pearl, and then you end up having to cross McGrath or having to go into Jasper and then Gilman and then, you know, go under the bridge to East Somerville. Because I don't know what else bikers are going from McGrath. Like they can't ride on McGrath right now, so there is no other option, I think. And then we could think about a way to remove that lane and just turn everybody left and east directions to go through Skilton, the park, and Gilman, and so on. And then if they want to rejoin McGrath, they can go through this Aldrich Street. And then, you know, when the boulevard is ready, they can just go and merge with the bike lanes over there.
Go ahead, Christopher.
Just at least one letter I've seen, I think it might have been from SAS, or somebody talking about this, did express concerns about bikes being routed through the Leathers Park, and if that is happening, to take a look at facilities there to separate bike and pedestrians, because those are not particularly wide paths. So if you're going to get through bikers who are looking to make time, or commuters or such, we don't want to have pedestrians at risk. Just to throw another monkey wrench in there, but somebody had expressed concerns about, you know, that being a place to rest and have kids run around and then suddenly get high bike traffic through it.
I don't want to put mobility on the spot. But I am curious if you are willing to offer some insight, because I know that Pearl Street was initially, you know, projected for a two-way protected bike lane. And then, you know, we the concept went in a different direction based on community feedback. So I'm just curious, like, kind of in light of our discussion, like what is the thought process behind like providing bikers with this clear path on Pearl Street? And is there something that we might be missing if we advocate for taking it away in the way that we are?
Yeah, I guess the thing that we said we would do that maybe that doesn't explain is provide a connection to McGrath, right? That the Neighborway provides the connection under McGrath Highway. It provides a connection to the community path. You know, Aldridge Street is a one-way. We have neighborways on one-way streets. It is a little tricky though that it's kind of like an exit off of a high-speed road, and you know, with wondering whether that could work in both directions, at least as it currently exists today. But yeah, I think if you guys are free to go in whatever direction you like, but I would say that should be part of the explanation is how will folks connect to McGrath? Because again, just clarifying, there is a separated bike lane on McGrath today. There's a gap from Pearl to Highland because they're still working on the bridge, but there will be, you know, by the end of this year, I believe, a flex post separated lane. And of course, we're working on the larger project where there'll be hopefully much nicer separated lanes. So the McGrath connection is important. And, you know, in reference to the short-term, long-term piece, like this is the construction project on Pearl Street, and I wouldn't, anything can happen, of course, right? But we would not likely be back to add a bike lane in the near future. And we'll need to explain to folks that have pushed us for 2 directions of bike lane, you know, why we would go down to 1. Which we already are explaining as a part of this process why we have the 1. So we're trying to propose a feasible, safe, you know, reasonably all ages route in both directions. And that's going to be the bar that we have to pass to really, we're doing something that's not consistent with the bike network plan in either of these options.
And just for clarity, have you guys already went through the process of convincing everybody else that this is a valid option? Meaning on the city council and so on, those who need to decide if this is going to be a...
Well, the proposals are out there. We're in the middle of the engagement window. I don't believe the council has to sort of vote or anything, though they probably will discuss it at some point. You know, if whatever option we go with, if it's not consistent with the bike network plan, we're gonna have to update what the network plan says and what are mileage requirements. So if we're losing mileage here, we have to make it up somewhere else. I think we have the ability to change the plan, but we are gonna have to meet certain requirements, and we do an annual report every March, I want to say, beginning of March.
Yeah,
by March 1st.
Published by March 1st. I'll also just add that it's not quite the first time that we've changed things after the bike network plan. On West Broadway, which was designated for 1 direction of protected bike lane, after kind of community response and thinking through like what are the trade-offs, we did propose 2 directions of protected bike lanes. It just, that was in a different direction.
Yeah. So, you know, in March, we'll have to sort of explain ourselves to city council and show them how we're making up the connection. Like, how are we still providing a usable connection? What's our reasoning? How are we still meeting the mileage requirements? So, you know, we have the ability to choose, you know, the project that we want to choose here, but we are going to have to sort of show our work and make sure it makes sense.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah.
How I realize that I have been asking a lot of questions and providing a lot of feedback. How do other folks feel about this question of bike lanes on Pearl Street? I for one, I would rather keep the bike lanes on Pearl Street. I know that there are many members of the advocacy community who, yeah, that, like Justin said, would like to see 2 lanes of bike travel on this. And just as someone who rides a bike but is not like active in like bike advocacy, right? I'm active in pedestrian transit advocacy. Like, I just don't feel comfortable making that call without like consulting the folks who are closest to these issues. But I am curious how other folks think about that question and whether it's something that we want to advocate for in either direction.
I do think it would be a shame to lose the bike lane in terms of, you know, eventually when the boulevard is constructed, you know, and the people would want to be spending more time on a bike on McGrath Highway. So there's that one thing. That being said, if I were cycling, I would do anything I could to avoid McGrath. So I was like, oh, okay, that's the route I would take if I were driving through or cycling through that part of town, the one that Vitor sort of pointed out. So that's not very helpful. So sorry.
So I think that it's the thought that coalesced into how Vitor very helpfully wrote this. It kind of combines a little bit of 2 things. Of one, just the proposing could this space be better as a sidewalk, more sidewalk space. But the second part which remains my bigger concern, of for a lot of casual bikers or children that are getting around, I think that having signage to say there is a slow, comfortable route for you to bike where you're not going to be passed by cars, that's something that I think should be clearly marked, because while the proposal from the city is saying, okay, you would use this Gilman to get back west, I don't see any reason why a biker that, you know, isn't looking to quickly get somewhere, but is just, you know, casually biking someplace couldn't use it to get east as well.
I would certainly be in favor of advocating for that, right? Like keeping the lanes on Pearl, but saying like, here's an alternative if you don't feel comfortable being routed to McGrath. I think that's a great idea. Did you want to say something, Brenda? I see you unmuted.
Just that I agree. Yeah, I think that would be nice to let people know that there's an alternative way to go. But I'm not sure that, yeah, we need to, I think just a couple of signs might be enough.
Yeah, even just something that says this way, like to the neighbor way or something along that line. Pictures of children on bikes or walking, like's been used with some of the other neighbor way signage, can kind of convey pretty clearly this is a quieter, safer route to go. It's not the I need to be somewhere now bike direction.
So it sounds like that might be a sufficient compromise for our committee. Are folks in objection? Does anybody not like that compromise idea?
Just to clarify, I think the subcommittee was offering the option to the city to think about it. I was like, should we do this? Should we just have a full lane there, knowing that we are designing a new neighborhood that could be much safer? Meaning, could we use that lane for something else? And we don't have the something else to put in place if we remove the bike lane. So that might just be worth, discussing about it and then realize, yeah, we don't have anything else good to put there, so the bike lane stays. But I think that there is this, yeah, I think the goal was just to get them or people to think about it.
I think we met the goal, at least we're thinking about it now.
Yeah, specifically, like if we are changing the way the bike network was designed, and if we have to go through all this process, we could go all the way and just like, let's make a safer path to East Somerville, if that is what we see that is, the most amount of usage on this corridor. Because that's another question for us, is like, after the boulevard, yeah, there will be like safer lanes on McGrath. Right now, it's really hard to justify anything going there, even though there are, like Justin said, there are facilities there. But why would you do it? Why would you ride your bike on McGrath? Especially like for kids. Like, would you would you allow your kid over there? I guess, would you allow your kid on Pearl at all, even after all these changes?
I guess my other question is my last question on bike lanes, I promise. But in a completely different direction, like I know that there are some in the advocacy community who are wondering about two-way protected lanes, but just on the south side of the street. And I know that we had talked about that as a possibility, like very early on in this project, but I'm curious whether that would even be feasible from mobility's perspective, or if there are like width reasons why that like can't happen.
it can happen with a parking lane, bump out lane, floating bus stop lane. So it's technically feasible, but there cannot be any parking. We have, for example, in front of the Pearl Street Park building, the two-way lane, there's no parking. We were able to retain parking in front of the green space because we're using just a foot or two from that space to be able to fit in the parking, but it's extremely tight and there's a little bit of a pinch point there. So it can fit on the street, but that's sort of like the option one designed from early on, where there could not be the flex lane or mostly parking, but also bump out floating bus stop kind of lane.
Cool, thank you. Is there anybody who does not prefer concept one, just at base, realizing that that is like kind of the fundamental recommendation that design review has proposed to us? Okay, great. Then, I think the only thing that is in the letter that we maybe should change before the committee sends it off and signs off on it is just instead of recommending that the bike lane be removed from the street, we advocate for wayfinding to let folks know if they don't want to go on McGrath, there is an alternative route that is recommended. Does that seem fair to folks?
I agree with that.
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably a balance that'll keep the majority of our group okay with it.
Great. Then is there anything else that folks would like added or changed to this letter before we vote to send it and recommend it to mobility? Okay.
I think we should add the item that Chris mentioned, just to separate bikes and pedestrians in the park. Just put it there. I know that design will come later, but when we get there, we just need to remember that this is something we asked for.
Agreed. All right, then with that, I motion that we send this letter to mobility with the changes to the recommendation around the bike lanes and with the advocacy for careful consideration of how bikes get routed through the park, especially in relationship to pedestrians. Do I have a second?
Second.
This is Linda. I second.
Double seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Design Review, for your hard work on this. Really, really valuable to be able to dive in with you guys. So we have 2 letters to send, which is great. We are on a roll, and I think we can end our meeting early unless anyone else wants to share things. You didn't announce at the beginning. Maybe you want to announce now. Yes, Christopher.
At the risk of me getting in on the monologuing, I did share something with Alessandra this morning. It was actually in the Boston Globe Camberville newsletter thing, that we've had some guerrilla tactical urbanism on the community path at School Street. Apparently someone has taken it upon themselves to put up a concave mirror to help improve sightlines. And there is actually a Reddit group that they're looking to organize for more advocacy for improving that intersection. So I know that's something that we have spoken about. Some of the comments did say, hey, have you raised this with the bike group or PTAC? Have you spoken to mobility? I didn't pile on there. I don't have a Reddit account, but I don't know whether that's something that we want that the community outreach can reach out to this person in this group, or whether we want to hand it off to mobility and say, hey, can you guys reach out to this group, or what the proper chain of command is.
They said they were having a meeting, right?
Yeah, I think so. I have to
On
admit, I read it on the T, so everything was bouncing around. I went, I should send this to PTAC. No, I should just send it to Alessandra, because people will get annoyed if I spam them when I don't have any actual, like, I'm not an officer.
This guy is running for council. If I
Is he? Okay, that might be part of it too. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe the thing to do is just to send someone from PTAC to this meeting to like see what they're proposing or talking about. Is anybody free next Wednesday at 7 p.m. and would be interested in joining?
Where are they meeting?
Great question. Register to see address, Somerville, Massachusetts. I'll send the link.
Okay, I was
Yeah,
going
I'm
to say
sorry
I'm
to say
already
I'm-
in Somerville. That's pretty easy,
Yeah, I've been, I have a book that I've been reading about tactical urbanism recently. Somebody was like, "Ooh, tactical urbanism." I'm like, "Oh, more, tactical, but also guerrilla." So
Yeah, and maybe I'll just briefly add, I think, thanks for bringing this up, Christopher. We were definitely aware of this kind of community momentum around. We brought this up before, and I think we're kind of doing some more exploration at the time when GLX was constructing this. Is the kind of the closest we could come to a best option. It's really challenging with the bridge and the retaining wall. So the structure itself is just presented a lot of challenges. The city really does hope to make some changes and are working to explore those now, kind of outside of the GLX process. So it is kind of an active thing going on, but we also understand that there's a lot of, kind of desire to improve things. So we're going to continue to kind of pull together some more details of kind of maybe anticipated timelines. But yeah, again, I'm not a trained engineer. It is but it is very challenging intersection. And maybe Justin, if I missed anything. No.
I have heard rumors. My daughter's in college now, but back when she was still in high school, I've heard rumors of high school students thinking about self-motivating with some sledgehammers to that curb to put in a curb cut on their own, but nobody's actually done it to my knowledge or tried.
Yeah, we're really glad it hasn't happened yet. It is part of the bridge. But we appreciate always Somerville's really high engagement.
Yeah, I just think of that because there's if you've ever been in Davis Square in the busway, there's a impromptu bike ramp that leads up onto the sidewalk in properly the right place. And there's not enough room for something that's ADA compliant or proper, but it does. I don't know who did that years and years ago, but a lot of people use it.
Well, thank you for bringing it up, Christopher. If anybody is able to go to the meeting, send a note to the listserv and about how it went. If no one does, then maybe we can reach out to the organizers and just be like, "Hey, happy to talk about this," or collaborate in some way.
And I wonder if we can think about a guideline for these types of activities. Like set up some boundaries of, I'm not sure what the city can say, frankly, but what can you do? Or are ideas that are just not supposed to happen, and they shouldn't even be thinking about it, because otherwise they can just run wild. So I don't know if there is some guideline out there from other cities and so on that have seen this before. It's just like, a one pager, one flyer kind of thing. It's just, yeah, we know that this is happening, and it's all good as long as you don't do this XYZ.
Yeah, for sure. We can definitely take that back to folks. I think I'd be interested in understanding some of those guidelines too. I think it's one thing when it's, some kind of like, like art along the community path. I think it's very different when it starts playing, I think it changing the structure of the facility.
And then you have the stuff in the middle, like crosswalks or modifying a crosswalk, which, I know in some cities has been big things. Honolulu, somebody modified a crosswalk to spell out aloha and got sued, I believe. That's sort of the really overly protective, I feel like, but on other cases there's been guerrilla crosswalks that cities have just adopted. So
If for nothing else, it'd be interesting to just see what people are talking about that might be areas that there's some extreme pent up frustration about the infrastructure. And then maybe we can take some of those pieces back and then see if there's more official things that the city might be able to consider.
yeah, certainly if the mirror's not doing any structural harm or hurting anybody's private property, it seems like a net positive to my perspective. And if people like it and it's being used, it wouldn't hurt if the city can replace something that's connected with zip ties with something that's a little bit bigger and more permanent.
So I will just note that things like that, and again, we can clarify this to DPW, but they have shared with us before, things like that, they don't actively go out and remove, but
Mhm.
they do not replace. And that is one thing that does start to happen, is sometimes there's things like this, and then it comes damage and someone's like, oh, fix this or slide it because the glare is this. And it's like DPW will not, this is not city. And also, like, we don't necessarily, in general, we don't use a lot of concave mirrors because they can be distortion or glare. You don't do them on roadways. They don't follow MUTCD guidelines because of the distorted experience they can create for people. It's slightly different when that's not a roadway, right? But that's where like it can get kind of tricky. So I think we've had that sometimes where someone's like, replace this thing here, and it's not actually something that's of the cities.
And maybe that is the guidance. It's like you can put the mirror there. And then, by the way, this is the process to make the mirror part of what the city has to maintain. And we're going to go through a process and establish something that is more formal.
Well, thank you for bringing it to our attention, Christopher. Really, really interesting stuff happening with our neighbors. All right, I am going to adjourn this meeting. Next month we will be back hybrid, so we'll have our in-person again. That will be on July 17th. And I don't think we have anything between now. Oh, yes, we do. We have our informal enforcement conversation that we are having at Aeronaut on July 9th. So this will just be a gathering. You're allowed to talk about other things, obviously, but like the goal is to, kind of get into, some of the disagreements that we might have around enforcement. So I think that we'll have really good conversations. But that is the only thing between now and our next PTAC meeting. So have a really wonderful July 4th weekend, or other holidays or vacations, whatever you might be doing. And yeah, see you next time. Thanks, everyone.